The hammer rang against the anvil with such force that Molly Richardson thought her brother might actually split the iron in two. And she knew from the tension in his shoulders that something had gone terribly wrong at the poker game last night. "Thomas, you are going to break something if you keep hammering like that," Molly said from the doorway of the smithy, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her apron. The heat rolling out from the forge made her step back even though it was already warm this April morning in White Oaks, New Mexico. Her brother Thomas looked up, his face streaked with soot and sweat. At 28, he was the finest blacksmith in Lincoln County, but right now he looked more like a man heading toward an early grave. "We have a problem, Molly, a big one." Molly's stomach dropped. At 22, she had been keeping house for her brother ever since their parents died of fever 3 years ago. They had moved to White Oaks from Kansas City in 1881, hoping the mining boom would bring Thomas steady work. It had, but her brother had one weakness that threatened everything they had built. "Cards, how much?" she asked quietly. Thomas set down his hammer, the clang echoing in the sudden silence. $300. The number hit her like a physical blow. $300 was more than they made in half a year. "Thomas, no, tell me you are joking." "I thought I had a good hand. I really did, Molly, but Walter Grimsby had better, and you know what kind of man he is." Thomas's voice cracked slightly. "He gave me 2 weeks to pay up or he is taking the smithy. He has the deed papers and everything ready to go." Molly sank onto the bench near the door, her legs suddenly weak. The smithy was not just their livelihood. It was their home, their future, everything their parents had sacrificed for. She thought of the little house attached to the workshop, the garden she had carefully tended, the chickens in the coop out back. All of it could vanish because of one stupid night. "There has to be something we can do," she said, forcing herself to think practically. "Could we borrow from the bank?" Thomas shook his head. "Already tried. They said we are not good for that kind of money, not with my gambling reputation." He looked at her with desperate eyes. "I am so sorry, Molly. I promised you after the last time that I would not play any more. I broke that promise, and now we are going to lose everything." Before Molly could respond, they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Both of them turned to see a tall man dismounting from a beautiful chestnut mare. He was lean and moved with an easy grace, his face partially shaded by a well-worn hat. When he removed it, Molly saw he was young, probably around her own age, with dark hair and kind eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Excuse me," the stranger said, his voice soft and polite. "I am looking for the blacksmith. My horse threw a shoe about 2 miles back." Thomas straightened up, wiping his hands on his leather apron. "That would be me. Thomas Richardson. This is my sister, Molly." The stranger nodded respectfully to both of them. "Jacob Carmichael." "Most folks call me Jake. I am much obliged for your help." Molly watched as Jake led his mare into the smithy. There was something gentle about the way he handled the horse, speaking to her in low tones and stroking her neck to keep her calm. The mare, who Molly suspected might be skittish with strangers, seemed completely at ease with him. "Beautiful animal," Thomas commented, examining the hoof. "Quarter horse." "Yes, sir. Her name is Willow. She has been with me for 4 years now." Jake glanced around the smithy, his eyes appreciating the quality of the tools and the orderly workspace. "You run a fine operation here." "Thank you," Thomas said, already heating the forge to reshape a new shoe. "You passing through White Oaks or staying?" "Actually, I am looking for work. I have been riding from ranch to ranch, but most places are full up right now. Heard there might be opportunities here in town." Molly found herself studying Jake when he was not looking. He wore simple but clean clothes, and his gun belt, while worn, was well maintained. Everything about him spoke of someone who took care of what he had. When he caught her looking, she quickly turned away, feeling heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the forge. "What kind of work are you looking for?" Thomas asked, working the metal with practiced efficiency. "I am good with horses mainly. Breaking, training, general care. But I can do ranch work, cattle driving, whatever is needed. I am not afraid of hard work." Jake paused, watching Thomas shape the shoe. "You have got a real skill there." "I always admired blacksmithing but never had the patience for it." "It takes time to learn," Thomas agreed. "But there is something satisfying about taking raw metal and turning it into something useful." Molly excused herself to go back to the house, but she found it hard to concentrate on her bread making. There was something about Jacob Carmichael that intrigued her. It was not just that he was handsome, though he certainly was. It was the quiet confidence he carried, the gentleness with his horse, the respectful way he had acknowledged her. In 3 years in White Oaks, she had met plenty of cowboys and miners, but few who had impressed her the way this stranger had in just a few minutes. She was pulling the bread from the oven when Thomas came in with Jake behind him. "Molly, I invited Jake to stay for lunch. Figure it is the least we can do, and he has been riding since dawn." "Of course," Molly said, trying not to feel flustered. "It is nothing fancy, just bread and stew, but you are welcome to it, Mr. Carmichael. Please call me Jake, and I am sure anything you have made will be wonderful." He removed his hat again, holding it respectfully. "If there is anything I can do to help, just say so." They sat around the small table, and Molly served the meal. She noticed Jake said a quiet grace before eating, and he complimented her cooking with genuine appreciation rather than empty flattery. As they ate, he told them about his journey from Texas, where he had worked on his family's small ranch until a drought had forced them to sell last year. "I sent most of my pay back to my parents," Jake explained. "They are trying to start over in San Antonio, where my mother has family. Once I have enough saved, I am planning to buy some land and start my own place. Nothing big, just enough for some horses and cattle." "That is a good dream," Molly said softly. She could see Thomas watching Jake with interest, and she suspected her brother was thinking the same thing she was. Jake seemed like a genuinely good man, the kind that was rare to find. After lunch, Jake thanked them graciously and paid Thomas for the work on Willow's shoe. "If you hear of anyone needing help, I would appreciate if you could point me their way. I will be staying at the boarding house on Main Street for now." "I will keep my ears open," Thomas promised. After Jake left, Thomas turned to Molly with an odd expression. "He is a good man." "He seems to be," Molly agreed carefully. "Did you see the way he looked at you?" Molly felt her cheeks warm again. "Thomas Richardson, do not start. I am just saying a man like that does not come around often. Polite, hardworking, respectful. That is all I am saying." Thomas paused, then added more seriously, "We still have our problem, though. 2 weeks is not much time." The reminder of their situation dampened Molly's mood immediately. She spent the rest of the day trying to think of solutions, but none presented themselves. That evening, she lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling and wondering what they would do if they lost everything. Where would they go? How would they survive? The next morning, Molly was in the general store buying supplies when she encountered Jake again. He was talking with the owner, Mr. Peterson, about possible work. "I am sorry, son," Mr. Peterson was saying. "I just do not need help right now." "Maybe try the hotel or the saloon." Jake nodded patiently. "Thank you anyway, sir." As he turned to leave, his eyes met Molly's and his face brightened with recognition. "Miss Richardson, good morning." "Good morning, Jake. Any luck finding work?" He shook his head but smiled anyway. "Not yet, but the day is young. How is your brother?" "He is well, thank you." Molly hesitated, then made a decision. "Jake, could I speak with you for a moment outside?" They stepped onto the wooden sidewalk, and Molly found herself suddenly nervous. "I am going to tell you something in confidence, and I am trusting that you will keep it to yourself." Jake's expression became serious. "You have my word." Molly took a breath and explained about Thomas's gambling debt, the threat to the smithy, and their desperate situation. As she spoke, she watched Jake's face carefully. She saw no judgment there, only concern and thoughtfulness. "2 weeks is not much time," Jake said when she finished, "and $300 is a considerable sum." "I know it is a terrible burden to share with a stranger," Molly said quickly. "But I thought, well, if you hear of anyone who needs blacksmith work, big jobs that might pay well, we would be very grateful." Jake was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant as he thought. "What if there was another way?" "What do you mean?" "I have some money saved. Not $300, but maybe 50. If I could find good paying work, and if your brother took on extra jobs, maybe together we could raise the money in time." Molly stared at him in shock. "Jake, I could not ask you to do that. You do not even know us." "You are not asking, I am offering." His eyes met hers with quiet intensity. "Your brother is a good man who made a mistake. Good people deserve help when they need it. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I am going to need a good blacksmith when I eventually get that ranch. This way Thomas will owe me a favor." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Molly found herself smiling back. "You are either very kind or very foolish." "Maybe both," Jake admitted. "But let me try. I am going to the Murray Ranch today to ask about work. They run cattle operations all over this area, and I heard they might be looking for drovers. If I can get hired on, I will get an advance on my pay." "Why would you do this for us?" Molly asked softly. Jake looked at her for a long moment. "Because I think you and your brother are good people trying to make an honest living. And maybe," he added even more quietly, "because I would like to get to know you better, Miss Richardson. If that is forward of me to say, I apologize, but I believe in being honest about my intentions." Molly felt her heart skip. "That is not too forward, and please call me Molly." "Molly," Jake repeated, and something about the way he said her name made her feel warm all over. "Then you will let me help, if you are certain. But this is a loan, Jake. We will pay back every penny." "Fair enough." He straightened his hat. "I should head to the Murray Ranch now. It is about an hour's ride. Could I call on you this evening to let you know how it went?" "Yes, please do. We will be having supper around 6 if you would like to join us." Jake's smile was genuine and warm. "I would like that very much." Molly watched him ride off on Willow, her mind whirling. She had only met Jake yesterday, yet here he was, offering to help them in their darkest hour. It seemed too good to be true, and yet something in her heart told her to trust him. There was a goodness in Jake that she recognized instinctively, a gentleness that seemed at odds with the rough world they lived in, but which she found deeply attractive. When she returned home, Thomas was working on a set of wheel rims for the freight company. Molly told him about her conversation with Jake, and her brother's reaction was a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "That is incredibly generous of him," Thomas said. "But Molly, are you sure about this man? We barely know him." "I know," Molly admitted, "but I trust him. I cannot explain why, but I do. And Thomas, we do not have many other options right now." Her brother nodded slowly. "You are right about that. If he can get work and contribute even $50, that is 50 less we need to find. I have been thinking about taking on that big job for the mining company. They want new support beams forged for their main shaft. It is dangerous work, and they know it, which is why they are paying premium. I could make maybe $75 from that job. Then we would need 175 more, Molly calculated. Is there any way we could raise that much in 2 weeks? Thomas rubbed his face tiredly. I could sell some of our equipment. the extra anvil, some of the specialized tools. Maybe take on every small job I can find and work double shifts. It will be brutal, but it might be possible. I could take in sewing, Molly offered. Mrs. Henderson asked me last month if I did mending work. I could let it be known that I am available for hire. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans, each trying to sound more optimistic than they felt. The truth was, even with all their efforts and Jake's help, raising $300 in 2 weeks would require nothing short of a miracle. Jake arrived promptly at 6, and Molly could tell immediately from his expression that he had good news. "I got hired on at the Murray Ranch," he announced. "They need help with a big cattle drive to Las Cruces. It is a 3-day trip there and back, hard work, but they are paying $20 plus an advance of $10. I leave the day after tomorrow." "That is wonderful," Molly exclaimed, then felt a small pang of disappointment that he would be leaving so soon. She pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the positive news. Over supper, they discussed their combined strategy. Thomas explained about the mining company job and the tools he could sell. Molly mentioned the sewing work. Jake listened carefully, occasionally offering suggestions or asking questions that showed he was genuinely invested in helping them succeed. "There is one more possibility," Jake said thoughtfully. "When I was at the Murray Ranch, I mentioned that I knew a skilled blacksmith. Mr. Murray said they have been needing someone to come out and do work on their equipment. Lot of repair work, new horseshoes for the whole remuda, things like that. He said it could be worth $50 or more for the right man. I told him about Thomas, and he said he would be willing to talk." Thomas's eyes widened. $50, Jake, that would be incredible. You will have to go out there and meet with him, show him what you can do, but from what I have seen of your work, I think he will hire you on the spot. After dinner, Molly walked Jake outside while Thomas cleaned up. The evening was beautiful, with the New Mexico sky turning brilliant shades of orange and purple as the sun set behind the distant mountains. "Thank you," Molly said simply, "for everything you are doing for us." Jake leaned against the porch railing, his hat in his hands. "I meant what I said earlier. I am glad to help. And Molly, I want you to know that my offer to help is not contingent on anything. Whether you want to see me again after this or not, I am still going to do everything I can to help save the smithy." Molly moved closer to him. "What if I told you that I definitely want to see you again?" His smile was slow and genuine. "Then I would say that makes me very happy." They stood there in the gathering darkness, and Molly felt something shift inside her. She had known Jake for less than 2 days, but already she felt drawn to him in a way she had never experienced before. It was more than just his handsome face or his kindness. It was something deeper, a sense of rightness that she could not quite put into words. "Tell me about Texas," she said softly. "About your family's ranch." Jake's expression turned wistful. "It was not big, maybe 150 acres. We raised horses mainly, some cattle. My father taught me everything about working with animals, about being patient and gentle but firm. He always said that if you treat a horse with respect, it will give you everything it has. I think that is true for most things in life." "Is that why you are so gentle with Willow? She was abused before I got her," Jake explained. "Some cowboy thought the way to break a horse was through fear and pain. When I found her, she was half-starved and terrified of people. It took me 6 months to earn her trust, but now she would follow me anywhere. She taught me more about patience than any person ever did." Molly found herself moved by the story. "You saved her." "Maybe. Or maybe she saved me. After we lost the ranch, I felt lost. But taking care of Willow gave me purpose, reminded me that I could still make a difference, even if it was just for one animal." "I do not think you are just making a difference for one animal," Molly said quietly. You are helping my brother and me too. That is two people whose lives you are changing." Jake reached out and gently took her hand. The touch was brief but electric. "I am going to be honest with you, Molly. I have not felt this way about anyone before. I know it is fast, probably too fast, but I feel like I have been looking for you my whole life and just did not know it until yesterday." Molly's heart was pounding. "I feel the same way. It does not make sense, but I trust it anyway. I trust you. When I get back from Las Cruces, could I take you riding? I would like to show you the countryside, spend some real time with you." "I would love that." Jake left shortly after, but Molly felt like she was walking on air as she went back inside. Thomas took one look at her face and shook his head with a knowing smile. "That cowboy is smitten with you," he said. "And I am smitten with him," Molly admitted, unable to hide her happiness even in the midst of their troubles. "Is that crazy?" Thomas set down the dish he was drying and looked at his sister seriously. "Mama always said that when you know, you know. She told me once that she knew she was going to marry Papa the first day she met him. Maybe it is the same for you." "Maybe," Molly whispered, letting herself hope. The next day was a flurry of activity. Thomas went to the Murray Ranch and met with the owner, returning with not only the job Jake had mentioned but an additional order for custom work that would add another $20 to their total. Molly put the word out about sewing services and immediately got 3 jobs, including altering a wedding dress for a wealthy mine owner's daughter, which would pay $15 alone. Jake stopped by in the afternoon before his departure for Las Cruces. He gave Thomas an envelope containing his $10 advance, refusing to take no for an answer. "This is a loan to a friend," he insisted. "And I expect you both to be here when I get back so I can collect." Molly walked him to where Willow was tied. "Be safe," she said, fighting the urge to reach for his hand again. "I will be careful," Jake promised. "And Molly, when I get back, there is something else I want to talk to you about, something important." "What is it?" He smiled mysteriously. "It can wait until I return. I do not want to speak of the future until I am certain I can help secure yours." Then, to Molly's surprise and delight, he reached up and gently cupped her cheek with his hand. The gesture was tender and full of promise. "Think about me while I am gone." "I will not be able to think of anything else," Molly admitted breathlessly. She watched him ride away, and already she missed him. It was amazing how quickly he had become important to her, how the thought of his return was something she anticipated with every fiber of her being. Over the next 3 days, Molly and Thomas worked themselves to exhaustion. Thomas took the dangerous mining company job, working deep in the shaft to install the new support beams. Molly worried constantly, knowing that cave-ins were common and her brother was risking his life. But they needed the money, and Thomas was determined to honor his commitment. Molly sewed until her fingers ached, taking on every job she could find. She altered dresses, mended shirts, created new curtains for the hotel. The work was tedious and the pay was modest, but every dollar brought them closer to their goal. On the 4th day, Jake returned. Molly was hanging laundry when she saw him riding up, and her heart leaped at the sight of him. He looked tired and dusty from the trail, but his face lit up when he saw her. "You are back," she called out, unable to hide her joy. Jake dismounted and walked toward her, and without thinking, Molly dropped the shirt she was holding and ran to meet him. He caught her in a brief embrace, and she could feel the solid warmth of him, smell the dust and leather and something uniquely him. "I missed you," he said into her hair. "I missed you too," Molly admitted, pulling back to look at him. "How did it go?" "Hard but successful." "I have my pay, and I have news that might help even more." His eyes were bright with excitement. "Can we talk? All 3 of us?" They went inside, where Thomas was taking a rare break from the forge. Over coffee, Jake explained that he had made connections during the cattle drive. One of the other drovers was getting married and needed a wedding ring made. Another knew a rancher who was looking for someone to craft decorative metalwork for his new house. Jake had talked up Thomas's skills at every opportunity, and now there were potential clients asking specifically for the blacksmith from White Oaks. "You did all that while herding cattle?" Thomas asked in amazement. "Cowboys spend a lot of time talking around the campfire," Jake said with a grin. "I just made sure they were talking about the right things. Some of these jobs might not come through for weeks or months, but the wedding ring is urgent. The drover's name is Pete Collins, and he is willing to pay $20 for good work." They added up their progress. Jake's advance and cattle drive pay gave them $40. Thomas's jobs brought in $160. Molly's sewing had earned $30. They had $230, still $70 short with only 5 days remaining. "We are so close," Molly said, frustrated and hopeful at the same time. "What about the tools I was going to sell?" Thomas suggested. "I have not done that yet." "How much do you think they are worth?" Jake asked. "Maybe $30–40 if I am lucky. That still leaves us short." They sat in discouraged silence for a moment. Then Jake straightened up. "I have an idea. It is a long shot, but it might work. There is a horse I saw at the Murray Ranch. Beautiful animal, strong, but completely untrained. Mr. Murray said the horse was too wild, probably going to sell it for meat. But I think I could break it, train it proper. If I did that, if I could prove the horse was valuable, Mr. Murray might buy it back for breeding stock. That could be worth $50 or more." "How long would it take?" Thomas asked. "If I worked with the horse every day, maybe 4 or 5 days. I would need Mr. Murray's permission to try, but I think I could convince him. He saw how I handled the other horses on the drive. He respects my abilities." "It is risky," Molly said. "What if you cannot train the horse in time?" Jake met her eyes steadily. "Then we will find another way, but I have to try. I believe I can do this, Molly." Looking at his confident, determined face, Molly found herself believing too. "Then go, try, we will keep working on our end." Jake stood. "I will ride out there today and talk to Mr. Murray. Molly, could you walk me out?" Outside, away from her brother's eyes, Jake took both of Molly's hands in his. "I know I said I wanted to wait to talk about the future, but I cannot hold this in any longer. These past few days away from you made me realize something. I am falling in love with you, Molly Richardson. I know it is fast and maybe crazy, but it is the truth." Molly felt tears spring to her eyes. "Jake, I am falling in love with you too. I have been since the moment you were so gentle with your horse, since you offered to help us without expecting anything in return, since you looked at me like I was precious." Jake pulled her closer. "When this is all over, when the smithy is safe and we are not fighting against the clock, I want to court you properly. I want to take you riding and show you all the beautiful places around here. I want to sit with you in the evening and talk about our dreams. And Molly, I want to build those dreams together if you will have me." "I will have you," Molly whispered. "I will have you gladly." Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and new love. When they pulled apart, both were smiling despite the tears on Molly's cheeks. "I need to go," Jake said reluctantly, "but I will be back soon with good news. I promise." Molly watched him ride away again, but this time she felt different. This time she knew he was coming back not just to help with their problem, but to be with her. The thought filled her with warmth and determination. Over the next 4 days, their little house became a hub of frantic activity. Thomas worked 18-hour days, taking on every job no matter how small. He forged the wedding ring for Pete Collins, and the result was so beautiful that Pete told everyone he knew, bringing in 3 more small orders. Molly sewed until her eyes were sore, finishing the wedding dress alterations and taking on rush orders that paid premium prices. Jake came by every evening to report on his progress with the wild horse. The animal was a challenge, he admitted, stubborn and frightened. But gradually, with patience and gentle persistence, Jake was earning its trust. By the third day, he could approach the horse without it bolting. By the fourth day, he had a halter on it and was leading it around the corral. "One more day," Jake said on the evening before their deadline. "Tomorrow I am going to try to ride him. If I can do that, if I can show Mr. Murray that this horse can be trained, I think he will buy him for the breeding program." "Be careful," Molly pleaded. "I do not want you getting hurt." Jake touched her face tenderly. "I will be. I have too much to live for now." That night, Molly could not sleep. She lay in bed, counting and recounting their money. They had $265. Even if Jake succeeded with the horse, they would just barely make it, and if he did not succeed, they would lose everything. She was up before dawn, making breakfast with nervous energy. Thomas was already at the forge, working on one last small job that would bring in another $3. Every penny counted now. Jake arrived mid-morning, and Molly could see immediately that something significant had happened. He was dirty and bruised, but his eyes were shining with triumph. "I rode him," he announced. "It was rough and he bucked like crazy, but I stayed on. More importantly, I got him calm afterward. Mr. Murray saw the whole thing. Molly, Thomas, he is buying the horse for $60. $60. Molly let out a cry of joy and threw her arms around Jake, not caring that he was covered in dust. Thomas rushed over from the forge, his face breaking into a huge grin. "That does it then," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "With the $3 I am making today, we have $328. We can pay Grimsby and have some left over." The relief was so intense that Molly felt her knees go weak. Jake held her steady, and she could feel he was shaking slightly too. They had done it. Against all odds, in just 2 weeks, they had raised enough money to save the smithy. That afternoon, they went together to Walter Grimsby's office. The man looked surprised to see them, and even more surprised when Thomas counted out $300 in cash and placed it on his desk. "I believe this settles my debt," Thomas said firmly. Grimsby's eyes narrowed as he counted the money. "Where did you get this?" "Honest work," Thomas replied. "Every penny earned legally. Do you want it or not?" Grudgingly, Grimsby accepted the payment and produced the paperwork showing the debt was cleared. As they walked out of his office, Molly felt like she could fly. The nightmare was over. The smithy was safe. Their future was secure. That evening they had a celebration dinner. Jake had brought a bottle of whiskey which they used to make a toast. "To hard work, good friends, and new beginnings," Thomas proposed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," Molly and Jake echoed. After dinner, Thomas tactfully announced he had some work to finish in the smithy, leaving Jake and Molly alone. They sat on the porch in the warm evening air, Molly's hand in Jake's. "You saved us," Molly said softly. "I do not know how we can ever repay you." "You do not have to repay me," Jake said, "but I will accept payment in the form of letting me court you properly." Molly laughed. "I think that can be arranged." Jake grew more serious. "Molly, I know we have only known each other for 2 weeks. I know most people would say that is not enough time to know your own heart, but I am sure of mine. I love you, not just because you are beautiful, though you are. Not just because you are kind and hardworking, though you are both those things too. I love you because when I am with you, I feel like I have found the place I am meant to be. You forged a place inside my heart, just like your brother forges iron, a place that was not there before but now feels essential." Tears streamed down Molly's face. "Jake, that is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. And I love you too. I love your gentleness and your strength. I love how you helped us without expecting anything in return. I love how you treat animals with kindness and people with respect. I love that you see the best in others and bring it out. You have forged a place in my heart too, and I never want you to leave it." Jake pulled her close and kissed her deeply. This kiss was different from their first one. It held passion and promise, commitment and desire. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I want to do this right," Jake said. "I want to build something stable before I ask you the question I am dying to ask. I need to save money, find steady work, maybe start acquiring some land. Will you wait for me while I do that?" "Jake Carmichael, I would wait for you forever if I had to, but I do not think you should wait too long to ask whatever question you are dying to ask. I already know my answer." Jake's smile was brilliant. "Give me 3 months. 3 months to prove I can provide for you the way you deserve. Then I am going to ask you to marry me, and I hope you will say yes." "I will say yes," Molly whispered. "I am saying yes right now." 3 months, Jake repeated. "Let me do this properly." Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Thomas's reputation as a blacksmith had been greatly enhanced by all the work he had done during their desperate push to save the smithy. New clients sought him out, and he was able to raise his prices. The business thrived as it never had before. Jake found steady work at the Murray Ranch. His success with the wild horse had impressed Mr. Murray enough to offer him a permanent position as head wrangler. The job paid well and came with a small cabin on the ranch property. Jake spent his days working with horses, doing what he loved, and every evening he rode into town to see Molly. They fell into a courtship that was both traditional and deeply romantic. Jake took Molly riding through the beautiful New Mexico landscape, showing her hidden valleys and mountain streams. They attended church socials together, where Molly proudly introduced Jake to everyone she knew. They spent long evenings on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's hearts. Molly discovered that Jake had a gift for storytelling, regaling her with tales of his adventures on the trail. Jake learned that Molly had dreams beyond keeping house for her brother. She wanted to have her own home, raise children, maybe even have a small garden where she could grow vegetables to sell at the market. Every dream she shared, Jake tucked away in his heart, determined to make them all come true. Thomas watched their courtship with approval and growing affection for Jake. One evening, about 6 weeks after they had paid off the debt, Jake asked to speak with Thomas privately. They went into the smithy and Jake cleared his throat nervously. "Thomas, I love your sister. I think you know that by now. I want to marry her, but I wanted to ask your permission first. I know I am not wealthy, but I am hardworking and honest. I will spend every day of my life making sure Molly is happy and cared for. I will protect her, provide for her, and love her with everything I have. So I am asking, will you give me your blessing to propose to her?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, and Jake felt his heart pounding. Finally, Thomas extended his hand. "You are a good man, Jake Carmichael, the kind of man I always hoped my sister would find. You have my blessing and you have my friendship. When you ask her, she is going to say yes, and I am going to be honored to call you my brother." The two men shook hands, then embraced. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had one more week until his self-imposed 3-month deadline, and he had been planning carefully. The next week, Jake asked Molly to come riding with him on Saturday afternoon. It was late June now, and the New Mexico summer was in full bloom. The desert landscape was dotted with colorful wildflowers, and the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Jake led them to a spot he had discovered on one of his rides, a small oasis where a natural spring created a pool of clear water surrounded by cottonwood trees. It was shaded and beautiful, a private paradise in the middle of the vast landscape. "This is incredible," Molly breathed. "How did you find this place?" "I have been exploring," Jake admitted. "Looking for the perfect spot." "Perfect for what?" Jake dismounted and helped Molly down from her horse. He had brought a blanket which he spread out near the water. From his saddlebag, he produced a simple meal he had packed. They ate and talked, enjoying the peace and beauty of the location. Molly noticed that Jake seemed nervous, though he was trying to hide it. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to slant through the trees, Jake took both her hands in his. "Molly, 3 months ago I rode into White Oaks looking for work. I had no idea that I was actually searching for something much more important. I was searching for home, for love, for you. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. Every day I wake up grateful that I threw that horseshoe, that Willow needed a blacksmith, that fate brought me to your door." Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate ring, a simple gold band with a small but beautiful turquoise stone set in the center. "This turquoise came from a mine here in New Mexico. I chose it because it reminds me of the sky here, of this place where we found each other. Molly Richardson, I am not a rich man and I cannot promise you luxury, but I can promise you love, faithfulness, and a life built on honesty and hard work. Will you marry me?" Molly was crying openly now, tears of pure joy streaming down her face. "Yes, Jake, yes, of course I will marry you." Jake slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the love and passion he had been holding back. Molly kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring 3 months of longing and love into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you so much," Molly said. "I cannot believe you are going to be my husband." "And you are going to be my wife," Jake said wonderingly. "The most beautiful, kind, amazing wife any man could ask for." They stayed at the oasis until the sun began to set, making plans for their future. Jake revealed that he had been saving every penny he could. And with what he had managed to set aside plus a small inheritance from his grandmother that had recently come through, he had enough for a down payment on some land. He had his eye on a property just outside White Oaks, 20 acres with good water access and room for horses. "We could build a house there," Jake said excitedly. "Nothing fancy at first, but solid and comfortable. We would be close enough to town that you could visit Thomas easily. I could continue my work at the Murray Ranch while we build up our own herd. In a few years, we could be self-sufficient." Molly listened to his dreams with shining eyes. "It sounds perfect, absolutely perfect." "And children?" Jake asked tentatively. "Do you want children?" "Very much," Molly said. "I want to fill our house with love and laughter. I want to give our children the kind of happy childhood my brother and I had before our parents died. I want them to grow up seeing their parents love each other." "They will definitely see that," Jake promised, kissing her again. When they rode back to town that evening, both were glowing with happiness. Thomas took one look at them and started laughing. "I take it she said yes." "She said yes," Jake confirmed, shaking Thomas's hand vigorously. They celebrated late into the night, making plans for the wedding. Molly wanted something simple but meaningful. They decided on a ceremony in the small church in White Oaks in early August, giving them about 6 weeks to prepare. Those 6 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Molly worked on her wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation of cream-colored linen. Jake finalized the purchase of his land and began working on plans for their house. Thomas, with the help of some friends, started clearing the building site and gathering materials. The whole town seemed to catch wedding fever. Mrs. Henderson offered to make the wedding cake. Mr. Peterson donated supplies from his store. The Murray family, who had become fond of Jake, offered to host the wedding reception at their ranch. Even Walter Grimsby, who seemed to have gained a grudging respect for the Richardson siblings after they paid off the debt so efficiently, donated a set of fine china as a wedding gift. Jake's parents traveled from San Antonio for the wedding, arriving a week before the ceremony. His mother, Sarah, was a small woman with kind eyes who immediately took to Molly. His father, Jonathan, was a tall, weathered man who moved like Jake and had the same gentle way with animals. Molly could see where Jake got his best qualities. "You are perfect for my son," Sarah told Molly privately. "I can see how he lights up when he looks at you. That is the kind of love that lasts a lifetime." The wedding day dawned bright and clear. Molly woke early, her heart fluttering with nervous excitement. She bathed and dressed carefully, pinning up her hair with small white flowers that matched her bouquet. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the glowing woman looking back at her. Thomas came to walk her to the church. He looked handsome in his best suit, his hair slicked back. "You look beautiful, Molly," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Mama and Papa would be so proud of you." "I wish they were here," Molly said softly. "They are here," Thomas assured her. "They are watching over you and they are happy." "I know it." The church was packed with well-wishers. As Molly walked down the aisle on her brother's arm, she only had eyes for Jake. He stood at the altar looking more handsome than she had ever seen him, wearing a new suit and a look of such love and joy that it took her breath away. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. The minister spoke about love, commitment, and the joining of two hearts. When it came time for the vows, Jake's voice was strong and clear. "I, Jacob Carmichael, take you, Molly Richardson, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to stand by you in good times and bad, to be your partner and your best friend. You forged a place inside my heart, Molly, and I give that heart to you freely and completely." Molly's voice shook with emotion as she said her own vows. "I, Molly Richardson, take you, Jacob Carmichael, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to be your support and your comfort, to stand by your side through whatever life brings us. You came into my life when I needed hope, and you showed me what true love looks like. I give you my heart, my trust, and my future." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and told Jake he could kiss his bride, their kiss was met with cheers and applause from everyone present. Molly felt like she was floating as they walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, ready to start their new life. The reception at the Murray Ranch was a joyous celebration. There was music and dancing, plenty of food, and endless toasts to the happy couple. Molly danced with Jake, with Thomas, with Jake's father, and with many of the men from town. But her favorite dance was the last one of the evening when Jake held her close and they swayed together under the stars. "Are you happy, Mrs. Carmichael?" Jake whispered in her ear. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Molly replied. "And you? I feel like the luckiest man alive." They spent their wedding night at the small cabin Jake had been living in on the Murray Ranch. It was humble, but Molly did not care. She was with the man she loved, beginning their life together, and that was all that mattered. The next morning, they began the real work of building their future. With Thomas's help and contributions from several friends, they started construction on their house. It would be small, just 4 rooms to start, but it was theirs. Jake worked during the day at the ranch and spent his evenings working on the house. Molly divided her time between helping with construction, keeping house in the cabin, and continuing her sewing work to add to their savings. It was hard work, but they were happy. Every nail Jake hammered was a step toward their dream. Every meal Molly cooked was a celebration of their love. They fell into an easy rhythm of partnership, each supporting the other, working toward their common goals. By October, the house was finished enough to move into. It was simple but well built, with a bedroom, a kitchen, a living area, and a small spare room for future children. Jake built Molly a garden bed, and she immediately started planning what she would plant in the spring. They bought their first 2 horses, a breeding pair that would be the foundation of their herd. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Jake continued working at the Murray Ranch, learning everything he could about running a successful horse operation. Molly kept their home and expanded her sewing business, becoming known throughout the area for her fine work. They visited Thomas often, and he became a regular visitor at their home, clearly delighting in his role as Molly's brother and Jake's friend. Winter came, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Molly and Jake spent long evenings by their fireplace, warm and content. They talked about everything, their past, their present, their dreams for the future. Jake told her more stories of his childhood, his adventures on the trail, his hopes for their ranch. Molly shared her memories of her parents, her fears and hopes, her growing love for their life together. One evening in late December, as they sat together watching the fire, Molly took Jake's hand and placed it on her stomach. "There is something I need to tell you," she said softly. Jake looked at her questioningly. Then understanding dawned on his face, followed by such joy that Molly started crying happy tears. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am sure. We are going to have a baby, Jake, in the summer." Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "A baby, our baby." "Molly, you have made me the happiest man in the world." They told Thomas the next day, and he was overjoyed at the news that he would be an uncle. Jake's parents, when they sent word, responded with a letter full of congratulations and love. The whole town seemed excited for them. Molly's pregnancy progressed smoothly. Jake was attentive and careful, insisting she not overwork herself. He took on extra jobs to make sure they had enough money for the baby's needs. Thomas forged a beautiful cradle, working on it in his spare time and refusing payment. Sarah Carmichael sent baby clothes she had sewn herself. As spring came and the garden began to bloom, Molly felt her baby growing strong inside her. She and Jake spent hours talking to their unborn child, telling stories and singing songs. They argued playfully over names, finally settling on Samuel James if it was a boy, or Grace Elizabeth if it was a girl. In early July, on a hot summer day, Molly went into labor. Jake was terrified, pacing outside while the midwife and Thomas's wife Eleanor, whom Thomas had married in the spring, attended to Molly. The labor was long and difficult, and Jake prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life. Finally, just as the sun was setting, he heard the cry of a newborn baby. Eleanor came out with a huge smile. "You have a son, Jake, a healthy baby boy, and Molly is fine, tired but fine." Jake rushed in to find Molly propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Meet Samuel James Carmichael," she said softly. Jake carefully took his son in his arms, looking down at the tiny face with awe. The baby had dark hair like his father and was making little snuffling noises. "He is perfect," Jake whispered. "Absolutely perfect, just like his mother." "We made him, Jake," Molly said wonderingly. "This beautiful little person came from our love." Jake sat on the bed next to his wife, their son in his arms, and felt complete. This was everything he had ever wanted. A home, a family, a woman he loved more than life itself. He thought back to that day almost a year and a half ago when he had ridden into White Oaks looking for work. He had found so much more than work. He had found his home, his heart, his reason for living. The months that followed were exhausting but wonderful. Samuel was a healthy baby with a good temperament, though he kept them up many nights. Molly adjusted to motherhood with natural grace, and Jake proved to be a devoted father, spending every spare moment with his son. When Samuel was 6 months old, Jake made a decision. He spoke to Mr. Murray about reducing his hours at the ranch so he could focus more on building up his own horse breeding business. Mr. Murray, who had become a good friend, was supportive and even helped Jake acquire 2 more quality mares at a good price. Over the next few years, their life continued to grow and flourish. Jake's horse breeding operation became successful, known throughout the territory for quality animals. Molly's garden produced abundant vegetables, which she sold at the market, adding to their income. Thomas's blacksmith business thrived, and he and Alina had 2 children of their own, giving Samuel cousins to play with. When Samuel was 3, Molly became pregnant again. This time she gave birth to a daughter, whom they named Grace Elizabeth as they had planned. Grace had Molly's red hair and Jake's gentle nature. 2 years after Grace came another son, whom they named Thomas after Molly's brother, though they called him Tommy to avoid confusion. Their house grew along with their family. Jake added on 2 more bedrooms and expanded the kitchen. He built a proper barn for the horses and fenced off areas for the children to play safely. Molly's garden expanded, and she started keeping bees for honey. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters when they worried about the horses. There were times when money was tight, and they had to be careful with every penny. There were illnesses and injuries, the normal challenges of frontier life. But through it all, Jake and Molly faced everything together, their love only deepening with time. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jake took Molly back to the oasis where he had proposed. They left the children with Thomas and Alina for the day and rode out together, just the 2 of them, like they used to do during their courtship. The oasis was exactly as Molly remembered it. They spread out a blanket and sat together, watching the water and remembering. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "Marrying me, I mean. You could have had an easier life, someone with more money." Molly turned to look at him, shocked. "Jake Carmichael, how can you even ask that? You are everything I ever wanted and more. These past 10 years with you have been the happiest of my life. We have a beautiful home, 3 wonderful children, and a love that most people only dream of. What could I possibly regret?" "I just want to make sure you are happy," Jake said softly. "I am happy, incredibly, wonderfully happy." Molly took his hand. "Do you remember what you said to me when you proposed? You said I forged a place inside your heart. Well, Jake, you forged a place inside mine too, a place that belongs only to you, that will always belong to you no matter what. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I will love you more still tomorrow." Jake pulled her close and kissed her tenderly. "I love you too, Molly. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They stayed at the oasis until sunset, talking and laughing, remembering their journey together and dreaming about the future. When they rode back home, 3 children ran out to greet them, and Molly felt her heart overflow with gratitude. The years continued to pass, bringing more changes. Samuel grew into a strong, kind young man who loved working with horses like his father. Grace inherited her mother's skill with sewing and her father's way with animals. Tommy was the adventurer of the family, always exploring and getting into minor mischief. Jake's parents visited regularly, delighting in their grandchildren. Thomas and Alina's family remained close, the cousins growing up together like siblings. The community around White Oaks prospered, and the Carmichael Ranch became one of the most respected operations in the area. When Samuel turned 18, he approached his parents with a request. He wanted to expand the operation, maybe start breeding cattle as well as horses. Jake and Molly listened carefully to his plans, impressed by his vision and determination. Together, father and son began building toward a new future, one that would carry the family forward into the next generation. Grace, at 16, was being courted by a young man from a neighboring ranch. Jake found himself in the strange position of being the father with a shotgun on the porch, though he had to admit the boy seemed decent enough. Molly teased him about being overprotective, reminding him that he had been not much older when he had fallen in love with her. That was different, Jake insisted. I had good intentions. And how do you know this boy does not have good intentions? Molly asked with a smile. Because he is a boy and I was a boy once. I know how boys think. Molly just laughed and kissed her husband's cheek. Trust our daughter. We raised her well. She will make the right choice. Jake knew Molly was right. They had raised their children with love and strong values. Whatever choices they made, they would make them with good hearts. As Jake approached his 45th birthday, he found himself reflecting on his life. He had achieved everything he had dreamed of and more. His horse ranch was successful and respected. His children were healthy and happy. His marriage to Molly was as strong and loving as ever. He had good friends, a position of respect in the community, and the satisfaction of having built something lasting with his own two hands. One evening, sitting on the porch with Molly after the children had gone to bed, he voiced these thoughts. I am a lucky man, he said simply. We are both lucky, Molly corrected. Lucky to have found each other, lucky to have this life we have built. Do you ever think about that day I rode into White Oaks? If Willow had not thrown that shoe, if I had gone to a different town, we might never have met. Molly smiled. I think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be. Jake pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. After 25 years of marriage, she could still make his heart skip. You forged a place inside my heart that first day, Molly. That place has only grown bigger over the years. You are everything to me. And you are everything to me, Molly replied. My gentle cowboy who saved my brother and won my heart. I love you, Jake Carmichael. I love you too, Molly Carmichael. Today, tomorrow, and always. They sat together as the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Their children were safe inside. Their horses grazed peacefully in the pasture. Their life together stretched behind and ahead of them, a testament to love, hard work, and the power of two hearts joined in purpose. Grace eventually married her young man, a rancher named Daniel, who reminded Jake very much of himself at that age. They had a beautiful wedding and settled on a ranch not far from the Carmichael property. Samuel took over more and more of the daily operations of the ranch, proving himself to be even more skilled than his father at breeding quality horses. Tommy eventually decided to become a veterinarian, going away to study but promising to return and practice in the area. Jake and Molly became grandparents when Grace gave birth to a daughter, Emma, followed by a son, James. Samuel married a lovely woman named Catherine, and they had twin boys. Even Tommy, who had seemed likely to remain a bachelor, eventually fell in love with a fellow veterinary student and brought her home to meet the family. As Jake and Molly grew older, they gradually handed over the reins of the ranch to Samuel, though Jake could never quite stop working with the horses. He was 60 when he finally admitted that maybe he should let the younger generation do the heavy lifting. But he still spent every morning in the barn, talking to the horses and offering advice to Samuel when asked. Molly, at 58, was still beautiful in Jake's eyes. Her hair had gone silver, and there were lines around her eyes, but her smile could still light up a room. She spent her days tending her garden, sewing for her grandchildren, and hosting family gatherings that grew larger with each passing year. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a huge celebration. Friends came from all over the territory. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears. Thomas, now in his 70s but still working at his forge, gave a speech about how Jake had come into their lives at the darkest moment and brought light. "I gained a brother that day," Thomas said. "But more importantly, my sister gained a partner for life. In 30 years, I have never seen two people more perfectly suited to each other. They have shown all of us what real love looks like." Jake stood to respond, pulling Molly up beside him. 30 years ago, I was a cowboy with nothing but a horse and a dream. I rode into White Oaks looking for work, and instead I found everything I never knew I needed. Molly, you gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You loved me when I had nothing to offer but my heart and my determination. You stood by me through hard times and celebrated with me in good times. You gave me 3 incredible children and helped me build a life I am proud of. You forged a place inside my heart that first day we met, and that place has only grown with time. I love you more now than I did the day I married you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." There was not a dry eye in the room. Molly kissed her husband tenderly, and everyone cheered. As the years continued to pass, Jake and Molly settled into a comfortable rhythm of retirement. They took daily walks around their property, reminiscing about the early days and marveling at what they had built. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly. They traveled occasionally, visiting places they had never had time to see when they were building the ranch. On Jake's 70th birthday, the whole family gathered for a celebration. There were now great-grandchildren running around, the next generation of Carmichaels. Jake watched them play and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. His legacy was not just the ranch or the horses. It was these children, these families, this love that would continue long after he was gone. That night, lying in bed with Molly, Jake felt her hand find his in the darkness. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "About how blessed I am. About how one simple choice to stop in White Oaks that day changed everything. About how much I love you and this life we have built." "I was thinking the same thing," Molly admitted. "Well, except the part about stopping in White Oaks. I was thinking about how grateful I am that you did stop, that you walked into Thomas's smithy, that you were kind and gentle and good, that you stayed and fought for us." "There was never any question of me leaving," Jake said. "Not after I met you." They lay together in the comfortable silence of an old love, hands clasped, hearts beating in unison. Outside, the New Mexico wind whispered through the cottonwoods Jake had planted years ago. In the barn, the horses they had bred and raised settled in for the night. In houses nearby, their children and grandchildren slept peacefully. Jake and Molly lived many more good years together. They saw Tommy establish a thriving veterinary practice. They watched Samuel expand the ranch to become one of the most successful in the territory. They attended Grace's daughter Emma's wedding and held their great-great-grandchild for the first time. When Jake was 78, he fell ill. It was not sudden or dramatic. His body was simply worn out from a lifetime of hard work. Molly, at 76, nursed him devotedly, just as she had cared for him through smaller illnesses over the years. Their children and grandchildren visited constantly, filling the house with love. On a warm summer evening, with Molly holding his hand and his family gathered around, Jake took his last breath. His final words were, "I love you, Molly. Thank you for a beautiful life." Molly wept, but they were not entirely tears of sadness. She had been blessed with nearly 50 years of marriage to the love of her life. They had built something wonderful together, raised a family, created a legacy. Her heart was broken, but it was also full of gratitude. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people. Jake had been respected and loved throughout the community. Speaker after speaker told stories of his kindness, his integrity, his gentle strength. But the most moving tribute came from Molly herself. "My husband once told me that I forged a place inside his heart," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "But the truth is, he forged a place inside mine too. He forged a home, a family, a life full of love and purpose. He took two desperate people facing ruin and helped us save not just our livelihood but our future. He loved me with a steadiness and devotion that never wavered in almost 50 years. He was a good man, the best man I ever knew, and I am honored to have been his wife. Until we meet again, my love." Molly lived another 3 years after Jake's death. She spent that time surrounded by her family, still tending her garden, still sewing, still sharing stories of Jake and their life together. She made sure every grandchild and great-grandchild knew their grandfather's story, how he had come to White Oaks with nothing but a horse and a heart full of hope, and had built a dynasty through hard work, integrity, and love. When Molly passed away peacefully in her sleep at 79, the family laid her to rest beside Jake under the cottonwood trees they had planted together so many years ago. On her gravestone, beneath her name and dates, Samuel had inscribed the words, "She forged a place inside his heart and he inside hers, together forever." The Carmichael Ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's management and eventually under his sons. The horses bred there were still considered among the finest in New Mexico. The house Jake built was carefully maintained, becoming a gathering place for ever-growing generations of Carmichaels. In the living room hung a portrait of Jake and Molly on their wedding day, forever young and in love. And on warm summer evenings, when the wind whispered through the cottonwoods and the horses nickered softly in their stalls, it was said you could still feel the presence of Jake and Molly. Not as ghosts, but as a lingering sense of love and peace, a reminder that some bonds are so strong they transcend even death. The story of the gentle cowboy and the blacksmith sister became a family legend, passed down through generations. It was a story of love found in unlikely circumstances, of perseverance through hardship, of two hearts that found each other and forged a bond that lasted lifetimes. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them, that one small choice can change everything, and that true love, real love, is worth fighting for. In the end, Jake and Molly's legacy was not just the successful ranch or the large family. It was the example they set of what marriage and partnership could be. It was the love they shared so openly that everyone around them could feel it. It was the way they faced every challenge together, supported each other's dreams, and built a life that was richer than either could have imagined. Their story was proof that in the harsh landscape of the Wild West, in a time and place that could be unforgiving and brutal, love could still flourish. That a chance meeting between a cowboy looking for work and a woman facing ruin could become the foundation for generations of happiness. That sometimes, when you least expect it, you find exactly what you were always meant to find. Jake had been right that day he proposed at the oasis. Molly had forged a place inside his heart. But what he perhaps never fully understood until the very end was that in doing so, she had forged his entire future. She had given him purpose and meaning, love and family, a reason to wake up grateful every morning. And he had given her the same. Their love story was not a fairy tale. It involved hard work, sacrifice, and facing down real challenges. But it was real love, the kind that endures, the kind that grows stronger with time, the the kind that leaves a legacy long after those who shared it are gone. It was a love forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by years of devotion, as strong and lasting as anything Thomas Richardson ever created in his smithy. And so the story ends where it began, in White Oaks, New Mexico, where a gentle cowboy once rode into town looking for work and found instead the love of his life. Where a blacksmith sister facing ruin met a man who would save her family and win her heart. Where two people forged a place inside each other's hearts and built a love that would echo through generations. It was a simple story in many ways. Boy meets girl. Boy helps girl. Boy and girl fall in love. But the simplest stories are often the most powerful, the most enduring. Because in the end, what matters is not grand gestures or dramatic events. What matters is the quiet moments, the daily choice to love and be loved, the commitment to stand beside someone through everything life brings. Jake and Molly knew this truth and lived it every day of their long life together. And in doing so, they created something beautiful, something lasting, something that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. They proved that love, real love, is indeed the most powerful force in the world, capable of forging bonds that nothing can break, building futures that nothing can destroy, and creating legacies that time itself cannot erase. Their story was complete, a circle perfectly closed, a life fully lived, a love fully realized. From the moment Jake rode into town to the moment Molly was laid to rest beside him, it was a journey of love in its purest, truest form. And though they were gone, their love remained, forged into the very heart and soul of the land they had loved, the family they had raised, and the legacy they had left behind.